What do we mean by creative diversity? Why did this become a buzzword in relation to meta ads this year?
Do you care enough about new customer acquisition? What you care about shows up based off of your actions, not your thoughts or your words or anything like that.
Today on the show, we're going to hear from Nehal Kazim from Ad Pros, who I think is just a very honest, candid, and excellent marketer. I heard him speak at Smart Marketer Live in Denver this year. I really enjoyed what he had to say. He had, a lot of great advice. And then when we were talking after the fact on it, also, I was really, really impressed by his approach and his candor. And I think so much B2B content out there, especially, marketer wise, is when it's successful, it's often superficial. And like we were just discussing, that is a fine line for us to walk. And so we're going to pick his brain on what's working with meta ads, Andromeda, performance marketing. But really, the thing we should know about are some of his claims. Ad Pros says that they drive unreasonable growth. And he's built this very, I think, narrow focus on adding $1 million to a business. Okay, that's interesting. It's tough to make claims like that. You got to really know what you're doing. So let's dive into it. Nehal, thanks for joining me. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
So, all right, on your site, on Ad Pros, you say that you seek unreasonable growth. What do we mean by that? Define it.
Unreasonable growth comes down to the size of a company. At a smaller revenue amount, unreasonable may be growing 10% month on month. For a $100 million company, that might be 20% annually, So it just depends of like the size of that business and what level of profitability they want to do it at. When companies are smaller, it's very easy to double very quickly. But at different stages of a company, that same number, just numbers get bigger. It's way harder to add new customers, and the percentages fundamentally decrease. And so for us, when we come into a brand, the goal is usually 5 to 10% month on month growth. For companies that are already doing $1 million to $5 million a month on average. And so that's our starting point.
$1 million to $5 million a month.
A month. And our responsibility and the goal that I'm coming in with is that how do we add your next $1 million a month? And so at $1 million a month, to go to $2 million a month, you have to double your company. It's very significant. But we've been in situations where they're already doing $10 million a month or 16 million in some cases, and our next million a month is still very hard. It's just a lower percentage of their total revenue.
It's a wonderful promise. How? Right? Like, what is?
It's very hard.
I imagine.
Yeah.
So, typically marketing agencies, are focus on, especially like with claims like that, they're like, well, it's omni-channel. They're really trying to plug in an entire new channel to a business, which on the marketer's end, maybe that's easy, on the actual fulfillment and operations for the brand, much harder.
Very hard.
You have constrained yourself where, you look for this very like focused, efficient execution. Talk to me about that approach.
It's come from a lot of pain and struggle of inefficient, unproductive execution over and over again. And the reason, when I've been running my company for 13 years or so, when I first started, I didn't have a goal of how much revenue can we add to a business because I didn't do it before. I didn't have confidence. With volume, with repetition, we started making claims of we can add $100,000 a month to your coaching business, to your info product business, because we accomplished that a few times. And so as we've got more experience and more results, the goal is like, how can we actually add $1 million a month to your business, ideally of net new business, new customer revenue. And the way that we normally do that, when you're saying of like adding a new channel, you can do that. And we've done that where we spent $2 million a month on a new channel on native ads, and we're able to add a lot of revenue, but it's very hard to crack a new channel. And we've also failed at it a lot. And so usually when we're adding the significant amount of revenue, it's with existing channels, and then channel expansion happens after, depending on how we're involved.
Which, yeah, I think that approach makes more sense. And tell me about achieving profitability with this. Like, certainly I could come up with ways to spend ads and lose money doing it, right? That's always the fear, but you want to do it profitably. Tell me about that approach or your thoughts there.
Yes. So this is very important because everyone talks about growth, but no one talks about profitability, or there's all this like shame, guilt, fear around profit. And it's not cool because like not everyone has the financing or the means or the stomach to do that. And so one of the consulting clients I just got off a call with yesterday, she's like, we went and added over $100,000 a month of new customers, but I didn't have the money. I had to get a loan because most of our revenue was new customer, and we didn't have a cap of how many new customers we can actually afford. And so there was no measure to decide of how much new customers should we get because there needs to be a balance. And so we have clients right now that we operate based off of what is the business-wide profitability, what is the max number of new customers you can get in your business based off of current new customer ROAS or contribution margin, and then we try to max that out. As the business has more recurring revenue for a subscription business, for example, we have the ability to acquire more customers. That's one side of it. The other side is people are saying, we've had this situation. Their monthly burn was like $50,000 a month. Their revenue was 40,000 a month. They have COGS and advertising, which was another 30,000 a month just on advertising, and so they were losing money. The way that we went about it is we set benchmarks of what is the business-wide profitability we want, what is the new customer profitability we want, and as subscription revenue added up, we were able to increase our business-wide profitability targets because it was like 100% at the initial. We spend 40,000, we make 40,000. But in order to create that subscription business work, we need to get new customers, get them to stick, and then we went from 100% ROAS to 120, 140, all the way up to like 250 over time. And then they can decide how profitable they want to be. That's when it gets fun. But whenever we make any kind of claim, the whole point is we will not and cannot spend if we're not at this level of profitability on new customer acquisition specifically, and ideally business-wide profitability.
One thing I've never understood, revealing my ignorance here, is with meta ads, when people talk about your creative and targeting, all that makes sense to me. When they talk about ad structure and seemingly how important it is, that baffles me.
Why?
Like, wait, how it's arranged in the Facebook Business Manager?
It's really simple, actually. It's because Meta is an algorithm, right? It optimizes based off of an auction system. And the goal here is that you want to provide the highest quality signal and data to Meta in order for it to optimize and get what you want. And so if your data is segmented or incomplete or structured in a way that you're actually getting fragments throughout to train the algorithm, your pixel to optimize for the right customer, it's just you're not doing yourself the favor. And so it's a very important question that you're asking. And I think a lot of brands owners especially don't ask this question. I was very anti ad consolidation, except until I started seeing things work. And so we've had accounts where spending $10,000, $20,000 a day or more on one campaign. And so that is because that one campaign, based off of the data that Meta wants to see, is getting the highest quality data. We're able to have a lot of stability in that structure. Meta's able to optimize and learn based off of that, and we're getting the results we want. And so the right structure does change a lot.
It sounds like what Meta wants now is consolidation, you know,
It's a big part of it.
fewer campaigns.
Yeah, they've been pushing that for years. The issue has been is that once media buyers actually followed a lot of the consolidation advice, it didn't work. And so
Hmm.
that's where people start hating their meta reps because they're like, well, meta reps have a quota of how many people use a new feature and function from an adoption rate standpoint, but media buyers care about performance. And so now you have conflicting goals as well as what the intentions are behind recommendations. And so it's very tricky, but now they're catching up.
Okay. With respect to ads, a phrase I heard over and over at this conference we are at, Smart Marketer, was creative diversity.
Yeah.
What do we mean by creative diversity? Why did this become a buzzword in relation to meta ads this year?
It's because Meta started it. So Meta wants creative diversity, and they're penalizing creative similarity. That's the important takeaway. So the what is creative similarity? Meta has not been very clear on their communication. We have reps, that we've got data from, but it's been inconsistent in term and not like very operational of what is creative similarity exactly. So creative diversity has started because of Andromeda. Andromeda came out earlier in the year, but at the time of this recording, in terms of November, people really started feeling it in August and September of performance. Whether that was Andromeda or not, that's TBD. But the 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 actual narrative started with Meta, and so I can explain more from my perspective of what I think creative diversity is.
Please do.
Yeah. So my perspective is that from a creative, there are a series of variables. The variables are what is the copy in the ad outside of the actual image, right? Then inside of image or video or carousel or any of the ad formats, what is the content inside of the creative as well in terms of visuals, as well as the copy, as well as the script. And so I like to separate it by variables just so I can understand like what are we actually like talking about. So I've broken down for my team and how we're looking at it is based off of three different elements of creative similarity. One is what is the creative type? And so is this an ad from a like video sales letter? That is a different creative type than like a get ready with me video or an ASMR video or, a UGC, like day in the life video. Like all of these are different styles. And so that is one component of what is the creative type. Then it is the ad type. How does that, the post-it note ad, for example, that type of creative, that ad type can appear in an image, it can appear in a video, it can appear in a carousel. So now you can combine creative type with your ad type. And then the last component from my perspective is messaging. Messaging is based off of what is the script inside of your video, for example, or the messaging you're using in your image, in terms of what the ad actually says. And as an example of what is inside of that post-it note. Is that inside of that post-it note a pain point? Is it a solution? Is it a benefit? Like what are you actually using in that? And so what we're going to like learn from Meta is what is their definition of creative similarity from their algorithmic standpoint, because what they're saying is that we are consuming and reading all of your ads to decide what is the definition of or how similar are they to each other. And my understanding, it's more on a spectrum of similarity instead of black and white. This is similar.
And so we want we want these very different ad types for its testing. Like we are trying to appease the algorithm here. And then it sounds like the thing they don't want is what we used to do with ad split testing, where it's like, all right, I have one ad that works reasonably well. Now let's take that ad, and the only thing that changes is the headline, is the hook. And
Correct.
we're just going to try that 10 different ways until we get the best one. Okay, that works. Now we're going to try and pair that working hook with different photo. It sounds like they don't want that like real incremental testing.
Yeah, and we're going to find out what happens with variations. Our meta rep, for example, told us don't do hook testing anymore. And so that changes how many assets we produce significantly. And a lot of people have stopped testing hooks, for example. We're in the mindset that we're actually optimizing for stages of awareness. And then inside of that, what is the transformation that they're looking for? And so if they're looking for a specific component of a health transformation, example like three, how we talk to a person at different stages of those awareness changes. And then that goes into the types of creative diversity that we were talking about. And so it's meant to be more expansive, and historically, last year or two, the value of iterations, like true iterations, in the sense of like this template works, I'm going to make more iterations using the same template. That has been a lot of people have been struggling with that. Most brands, I would say, from a performance standpoint, because it doesn't work like it used to. And we call these marginal versus radical concepts. And so the marginal concepts are the iterations. You just keep doing more of what's working and is generally marginal in the sense of like, cool, same script, give it to a different creator. And so it's still, marginal in that sense versus like, let's do completely something different in terms of an animation ad or a puppet ad or AI UGC creator or whatever.
At some point, I exhaust the market I'm targeting. At that point, what's the playbook? Do I try and find new audiences, different hook, or do I move? Yeah, go international, which that seems quite intimidating.
I don't believe in exhausting markets. I think like the like markets become like less profitable, but it's wild how many businesses are spending over 1 million a month that you and I have never heard of.
Yeah.
And so if you look at their impression counts and how many people they're reaching, for whatever reason, it doesn't reach me, doesn't reach you, or a lot of people we know in our circles, but they're reaching so many people out there. So my perspective on like market penetration and like market domination is like changed a lot over the years, because I think markets are way bigger, and I think the evolution of what happens in market saturation in the U.S. is there's many different ways to go after segments of the market, and then it's a matter of profitability. But I think there, if you're going after growth, there's a point where it becomes more expensive to acquire that customer in the U.S., and then it's way easier and more profitable to get that growth elsewhere. And so I also think that from a market growth standpoint, a lot of the times the limiting factor is how much can you pay for a customer and the amount of and that is directly correlated to your LTV, right? So the more profitable your customers are, the more that you can spend to acquire them. The amount of effort that people spend on acquisition is not 1 to 1 or even like 5 to 1 to on retention and lifecycle marketing usually. There's just not the same effort, resources, time, energy, any of that. And so before I think like market expansion is cool. I think there's a lot of opportunity. But I think usually what we really push for is what is the one offer ideally that we can get to 1 million to 3 million a month in spend. And depending on kind of revenue targets and recurring, et cetera, how much can we acquire? How many new customers can we acquire on a offer instead of 10 offers at the same time and trying to spend 3 million a month on 10 offers. Out of all the businesses I've analyzed and worked with and seen in the market, very few are doing a lot of spend in our circles in D2C that have like more than 3 offers. It's usually 1 to 3.
Hmm. Yeah, a little counterintuitive. That surprises me. I want to talk to you about ad creative. Do you have any experience using celebrities in ad creative? I suspect it doesn't perform as well as people think, but I'd have to think it certainly does well when you have someone recognizable.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. We had a client who paid Cardi B like $25,000 for a video. Imagine kind of like walking into your house and just sitting down, recording a quick video for 20 seconds and getting paid 25,000. That was like the amount of effort that was put into that video. We did a whitelisting.
It was like a cameo, but it cost 25,000.
Basically, it was absurd, and, it crushed. It did incredibly well. I hated the video profoundly, deeply, and it was so bad, but because it was Cardi B, because we had access to our audience, because it was whitelisting, did amazing. And so, I think there's a lot to be said about, like, using those, sponsorships and working with celebrities. I just don't have, like, a lot of experience doing it.
What's your spiciest take on meta ads? You're like, man, this is the thing I wish they would quit doing. They would change. This is where everybody else is wrong.
Right now, what I'm thinking a lot about is like people went from underproducing creatives to now with Andromeda are overproducing like crazy. Like it's so wild. It's like if we're creative agencies only, like we do creative, but we're not a traditional like creative agency. I think it's awesome for retainers because people want more creatives. But I think that is by far the most expensive and one of the worst use of cash right now because what happens is that you are there's a cost per asset, cost per concept, right? For a lot of brands, it's $250 to $500 for one concept, creative.
It's expensive.
It's expensive. I mean, it depends on the size of your business, whatever, but it's still expensive. And then based off of that, you have to test it. And so now there's ad budget that goes beyond that. And so there are, media buyers that the way they structure it is that if it doesn't get spent, it's not a good ad. So the issue is that now you spent $500 on a creative and it never got spent. And so you just threw away 500 times number of concepts that never got spent. Or the other thing is that now you have a bunch of creatives that you created, and because you tested so much at the same time, you don't have enough dollars to test so that you can break through with the creatives that actually deserve your spend. And so it's way better to find like the Goldilocks range of how much creative should I test at different revenue levels or spend levels as well as account status. And that way is way easier. We put together a calculator to do exactly that. And that way you can see, okay, right now I can only test 7 concepts a week. If I produce 14, I'm burning money.
If someone's listening and they're thinking like, wow, this approach is so rigorous in its thinking, and they manage their own ads before they go out and spend the money on an agency retainer, what's one thing they could do on their own in their own ad campaigns to add like the Nahal level of rigor to their ad platform.
I don't think every business needs a level of rigor. I have been humbled enough times to know that if your system is working, don't break it. The most important thing from my perspective, where I always start, is profitability of what happens on business wide and new customer. If you do not have a dashboard on tracking daily profitability on new customer acquisition of your volume, of how many orders you're getting, what your net contribution margin is in terms of just like what is your revenue minus your COGS and delivery payment processing minus your ad spend on a daily basis. If you just start tracking that, it's like looking at your bank account every day. You get exposed, and now you start asking higher quality questions.
That makes it so accessible and practical. I love that advice. And hey, you check your bank account every day. You probably do. You maybe should.
Yeah.
Like hearing that, like, oh, it's like the things you check daily are, what you get good at and you start to get a real sense of.
Yeah. Do you care enough about new customer acquisition? That is the real question underneath that, because what you care about shows up based off of your actions, not your thoughts or your words or anything like that. I think it is directly correlated to your actions. Because I have this in different parts of my life where I'm like, I really value that, but my actions aren't aligned sometimes. And so, and I see that when I'm coming in and auditing different businesses where I'm looking at this, new customers are so valuable to me. It's like, cool, show me a dashboard. Don't have one. And so, how are you deciding how many creatives to test? How much do you want to spend? What is your new customer like goal or growth rate? What do you want? Can't answer those questions. So it's like, it's not because you don't value it, it's you don't know how to value it based off of actions. And so that's the really hard part. And that's just part of, personal development as a leader, as a growth marketer, and it's ongoing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. I gotta go. I need a dashboard with some KPIs in it that I can check daily. That, I like these ideas. Now, Hall, I'm willing to bet you have resources for us.
I do.
Where can we go learn more about you?
Yeah. So if you have show notes, I'll send you links so that you can add those. But the easiest way to get a hold of me is on Instagram and LinkedIn. And so just Nehal Kazim and mention Kurt, and I'll send you a couple of resources on specifically how much you should be testing. That is a very important part. We have a calculator for that, so it relieves a lot of stress and anxiety of like, what should I do? What should I tell my team? Every like creative teams and growth teams overall just want to know how much creative should I test and how much should I launch. And so I have a solution on that. So I'll send that over. And then second is that when you're looking at ad creatives, when it comes to creative diversity, there's not really a formula out there. And so I created one when it comes to what happens from a creative ad type and creative type and ad types, so that you can have 34 different ideas so that you can share it with your team and say, how many of these have we actually tested? Because we're all very used to comfort naturally, which is we keep doing type of creatives that have worked historically, but that is the opposite of diverse. It's similar. And so here's a bunch of ideas so that you can get creative diversity.
Beautiful. Yeah, we'll include that stuff in the show notes. Nehal Kazim, Ad Pros, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.